Hello and welcome. This is the Coincidence Project Speaker Series. We are holding these sessions once a month with a variety of speakers who are all experts in the field. And we are exploring all different topics relating to meaningful coincidences, serendipity, and synchronicities, and how they apply and impact and can benefit our lives. And we're delighted to have our board member, Katrin Windsor, here today to share her ever-growing expertise in how meaningful coincidences and synchronicity appear and can benefit us during life transitions. So I will just let you take it away, Kat, and I'll make sure that I have screen sharing enabled in case you want to share your slides. Give me just a moment on that too. So on to you, Katrin.
Okay, I am so excited to be here. Hello, everyone. It is absolutely an honor to be on the board of the Coincidence Project, and I've been involved with Juliet and Bernie Beitman, MD, Dr. Coincidence for now 3 years, I think, and it has been a most amazing journey. It's been what I call spiritually productive, and it's changed my understanding and perception of reality. So I have experienced a lot of transitions myself, like you, like we all have experienced a lot of transitions ourselves. And it's been fascinating for me to see how coincidences and synchronicities tend to show up during transitions. I just want to give you a quick little background about myself. My transitions were very much around moving. I grew up in Switzerland, and I had a lot of transitions moving to other countries and cultures and adapting and trying to get used to and function and build a life I've lived in 5 countries. I've also worked in over 40 countries. So for some reason in this lifetime, it's been a lot of transitioning across cultures. Before I became an executive coach and now specialize in helping leaders through transitions 11 years ago. And before that, I was a tech exec. I was in software, helping grow software companies around the world. And so I got laid off a bunch of times. So I personally experienced layoffs, and those can be pretty traumatic transitions. So I experienced transitions from my own job losses and moving around the world, and from coaching leaders through their transitions. And I am passionately interested in transitions. It's especially my fascination is around how do people grow through times of change and transitions, because they represent such as uncomfortable as transitions are, they represent such a rich opportunity to grow, and they're full of coincidences and synchronicities. So I'm also fascinated, how can we use the challenges and stress of what life throws at us and convert them into fuel for growth? How can we somehow, even in the darkest hours, find a way to emerge from those pressures as a shiny diamond rather than let the pressure crush us? And so how can we see the light and those coincidences and synchronicities that abound and let them guide us so we emerge increasingly aligned with our true path and purpose? So I founded an organization called Leaders in Transition. We serve clients who face job-related transitions, specifically job loss. They feel, or if they feel unfulfilled in their current jobs, but don't know what's next. We also have one of my team who specializes in helping people who are 60 plus and don't want a traditional retirement, but they also don't know what's next. So, so we get people into groups at Leaders in Transition, and we guide them through their journey of transition, helping them come out of this time better than ever, inspired and grown. So our goal is to help you see your coincidences and synchronicities during those times. And what I'm going to do in the next 30 minutes is I'm going to give you a quick primer on what are transitions, what are the patterns in the process, and then look specifically at when in a transition do these coincidences and synchronicities show up most. I'm going to screen share. And then we're going to also hear stories. I'm going to share some quickies myself, and some of my clients, and we also want to see what stories might you have, because I make up. You have amazing stories. You've all had transitions. You've all had these things happen to you. So let me see. Yes. So proud board member. By the way, I love what the mission is of the Coincidence Project: illuminating the invisible currents that connect and unify us. And that's really true. So what is the change? So quick primer on transitions. What's the difference between change versus transitions? Change is the external event that happens. It's the circumstance that's changed or is changing. You lost your job. You lost someone close to you. You make a big move, you are suddenly an empty nester, you suddenly have kids, or you go on a vacation. Even on a vacation can be a transition. Transitions is the psychological process by which we try to make sense of or come to terms with change. So basically what happens is, we plod along, going about our day to day, somehow expecting that life is linear. And, but it isn't. Okay, wait. I love this thing about life is linear. This thing that we are so victim to this thought that life is linear, okay? Like we go to school, we go to preschool, we go to school, we go to university, we go, or we get an apprenticeship, then we start working, then we have relationships, then kids, or maybe no kids, but then we work, we save, and then we, retirement, and then we're supposed to have fun during retirement, and then hopefully we die after very compressed morbidity meaning that the time between having a high quality of life and the moment you die is very short. An example is, that you would run a marathon at age 92 and then go to sleep after running the marathon, and you peacefully die in your sleep. So that would be extremely compressed morbidity, okay? So we have this sense of that life is linear, and it isn't. Okay, like we just need to abandon this whole, in a way, lie. Like it's wrong. It's not true, right? Life is full of curveballs, and the faster we accept that fact, the easier we can deal with dancing with life, right? So there's these stressors, right? And typically it's like it forces people to move out of their familiar routines into uncharted territory. We pass from one role to another, right? We were single, suddenly we're in a relationship, or we were married, suddenly we're divorced. There's a change in mental or physical state, and changes in life stages. And so our founder here at the Coincidence Project, Bernie Beitman, and I had a conversation. And I asked Bernie, I said, why do coincidences and synchronicities show up more frequently during life transitions? It's a really good question, right? And Bernie has this amazing thing where he talks about this, that we have, we walk around with a movie in our head. The movie in our head says, let's say you have a job, okay? So even if you don't like the job, you walk around and you have a movie in your head that's kind of a movie of future expectations of you staying in that job. Yeah, you're going to bitch and moan because maybe you don't like your colleagues, but you're still going to pull a paycheck and you're going to hang out for another 5 years and be somewhat miserable, but that's okay. And then, you can afford such. Like, so you have a movie of future expectations in that job. And suddenly, it's like a big bomb explodes and it's like, that movie's gone. Okay. And then we have a hole, Bertie says, we have a hole in our head. And then we start filling that hole with like really bad disaster scenarios. There is, oh my gosh, what if I lose? Like, I'm just going to share what scenarios filled my head when I lost a job after I've been, breadwinner of a family of 4. My husband was in entrepreneurial land. Whatever money came in there went straight out again. So I was like the breadwinner of the 4 for a while there. And so the disaster movie in my head was, wow, we're going to lose our house. Wow, like our kid went to Princeton. It's like, oh, we're not going to be able to pay for his education anymore. It's like, all these disaster scenarios, right? And it's hard. So there is a bunch of disruptors. So there's the smaller disruptors, the fact of life, right? We feel off schedule, we're off course, we feel out of sync, we're not synchronizing. There's no synchronicities, it seems, at first, and we feel out of order. An average person has one disruptor every 12 to 18 months. That's according to Bruce Feiler in his book, Life is in the Transitions. And no, they don't meet the linear expectations in this non-linear world, but we deal with them. It's uncomfortable, uneasy, but we manage, and actually we get to learn transition skills. So put in the chat, what's a disruptor? So one of those more minor ones that you've recently experienced. Just put in the chat. Let's see what we got. Hey, pandemic, that was a bit of a disruptor in the last 18 months. Long distance move. Yep. What other disruptors? Very bad customer service. I'm sorry, John. Falling out with a very close friend. Lost my job. Moving. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Adjusting to those circumstances. There's the change in the cost of living, and then there's the psychological processing of adjusting to a higher cost of living. Right? So we have some of those. So then let's look at the big transitions. Okay. So I am literally drawing on Bruce Feiler's book, Life is in the Transitions here, because he does such a good job at explaining them. So he goes, life quakes, when life throws us monster curveballs, like a comic strip, boom, explosive force of change, turning points and life pivots, right? So he says it's a fundamental shift in the meaning. Wait, Julie, I'm sorry, Juliet, can you tell me what I'm doing that is covering things up?
Oh, yeah, it's just that Zoom toolbar is hanging out over some of your text a minute ago. Here we go. It's gone. Thanks. Perfect.
I didn't know that was visible. Oh, Zoom. Okay.
Oh, Zoom.
So it's a period of upheaval and renewal, and there is a clear before and after. We just finished a cohort going through of leaders going through this Leaders in Transition program. And there was a clear before, her husband died, and then after, right? Those are big transitions. And on average, Bruce Feiler says we have about 5 of those in our lifetimes. So, question, what's a life quake you've experienced recently or currently? That seems more like really changing the shape of your life. Or maybe a long time ago. In retiring at the end of December. Yes, John. Divorce and death of a soulmate. Yes. Husband with many serious illnesses. Yes. Left career in academic to work in nonprofit sector. Yes. Right? They changed the shape of your life. And so this, we have a range, which is nice. So let me show you, we'll get back to you, okay, on these. So let me show you this is William Bridges' book, Transitions, a total classic. So he talks about there's the endings, then there's the time in between, what he calls the neutral zone, and then the new beginnings. And in his model, he says, you know, there's a lot of emotions. During times of transition, when you lose your structure, when things change, so, you know, there's a lot of, it's high emotionally charged times. So these are the feelings that go along with endings. Then we have the neutral zone, which is, you know, there's a lot of confusion or disconnection or frustration, skeptical, apathetic. This curve here shows kind of the productivity that someone has during a transition. It really also goes down. So in our program of Leaders in Transition, we have these super accomplished executives who go, oh my gosh, I was able to, when I still had my job, hammer out and get stuff done in no time at all. And then suddenly I'm getting so little done. I'm suddenly not productive. So there's a really interesting curve here with the productivity curve that happens. And so Will Bridges really says, don't rush it, the neutral zone. Hang out there, allow to be in the neutral zone. Nail the neutral zone, okay? And it's needed before there's a new beginning. So, you know, what I found myself to work best with what you can do in the neutral zone is spend a lot of time in nature. Because it connects you to something greater to yourself. Because so often when we are experiencing transitions, we are so almost obsessively focused with that problem. I gotta solve that problem. And we go into doing, a lot of doing, you know, let's do this and that and this and try this, and like, or we have huge lists, we make huge lists of the things we should be doing. We think the answer is doing, but really the answer is being. And the neutral zone is rich of coincidences, synchronicities, possibilities, connecting to yourself, connecting to what you really love doing. And it's the art of the neutral zone that we do, that really seems to work so well for our clients in Leaders in Transition. And it's needed to have a great new beginning, because if you just rush, you may just end up in the same old that you didn't like before anyway, that you were bitching and moaning about. Or it's like the friend I have who for some reason, you know, gets married to blonde women, then the relationships get rocky, divorce. Guess who he shows up with next time? Exactly the same kind of woman. It's like, oh my gosh, you're almost the double of the previous wife. And guess how the relationship goes, right? So you don't rush into this. If you can afford it at all, find a way. And then I'm also very much inspired by Otto Scharmer, the theory of you, which is, you know, where this MIT professor, and it's where you download past patterns, you suspend, you redirect, very, very much letting go. And it's that bottom of the U here where you open up. It's the neutral zone. It's open up to possibility, become very present. These deep questions. Who is myself? What is my work? Are the questions that we don't really spend enough time on, and we don't really have time when we are busy in our regular life. And when life goes well, we don't really do that kind of self-reflection. And then when you do that well, which is, open your mind, open your heart, open your will, then you can connect to source and suddenly letting come. And the coming, that letting come and vision and intention, it's like so often comes from with signs from synchronicities and coincidences. So that's enough slides for right now. And there's a lot of slides. Let's see. So the question is, why do we actually, let me see by show of hands. Can you take me off? Oh, I can remove my spotlight. Kind of see people. Oh, everybody is on. Okay. So I can see. Okay. Let me see by show of hands. Do you believe that coincidences and synchronicities show up more during transitions? Or you're not sure? Oh, Heather Wellsand and Katrin. Okay. Okay, Heather Wellsand, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, and I think obviously I'm the one that shared that I lost my job in August. So I don't know if it's because you're more attuned and looking for them to happen. But I have had a number of different serendipitous things happen as a result of losing my job and beginning to network with former colleagues. And so, yeah, I don't know, Katrin, if you want me to expand on that at all.
Well, I love that was a great point. And because I want to ask you the second question, why do you think that is? So if that's true, which we believe is true.
Yeah, I think it's because you're in a state of being more mindful and intentional about what you're doing and what you're experiencing because you're looking for something, that next thing. So that's how I would frame it from my perspective.
Yeah, exactly, right? Because what happens is we had a structure, like in a sense of a job loss, you had a structure, right? And you were like plodding along in a daily structure, lots of meetings, lots of deadlines, lots of focus on projects and people issues and all that stuff, right? And then suddenly you get laid off because it happens to the best of us, right? And it's just the business world, right? And it's like, and then suddenly you lose that structure and it's like, oh my gosh, like even like, oh, you go kind of like this. And suddenly we're trying to, as you said, like trying to make sense of, wait a minute, what's really going on here? Where am I in this new land? You're in the new land, okay? And what's what and where am I going? And you start looking around in a way that you did not look around when you were in that grind. And so that's huge. Juliet, do you also want to maybe add a comment of why you think that there's more coincidences and synchronicities happening during transitions?
Yeah, thanks, Kat. It's a big point in our founder Bernie Beitman's book from 2016 that was called "Connecting with Coincidence," and he did a lot of research for over the past 20 years, actually, into this, and found, yeah, Kat's got her shelf copy nearby, "Connecting with Coincidence." It's a great read. and a lot of stories that he collected from his research and from his work in academia and as a psychiatrist in private practice that are fun to illustrate this. And, he saw that the transitions was key, because when people were entering times of transition, they weren't doing things just as Kat was just describing, the grind. And then it's really the habits and the patterns that we have, a lot of habitual and patterned behavior, and our brains, our nervous systems are hardwired to find that reassuring and to kind of check out and not be as present. So I loved Heather's point that part of it was about bringing some mindfulness and more intentionality to what she's been doing. I think it's a brilliant way to say it. And we are do not tend to be as mindful when we're doing something routine. It's kind of like getting all the way to lunch and you can't really remember what you just did with your morning on your work day. Or you get to a school or a frequent place that you visit from your house and you think, did I drive safely just now? Because you can't actually remember anything about the trip you just took, the journey. You can't remember, if you stopped for crosswalks or if you got a lot of lights or anything. We just check out. And so that's a hardwired process in our brains. It relieves some stress. We go into kind of distraction or mind wandering, and we're not present and we're not really attentive. And so we miss a lot. We miss a lot when we're off kind of distracted thinking and kind of ruminating about the past or the future. And when we're in our patterns, that's how we spend a lot of our mental time, actually, is not being very present. And I think it's that not knowing and being confused and disoriented, Kat, that you were talking about from the model of going into the neutral zone, that we can't just coast. We can't just check out. Sometimes we do. We have coping behaviors like sleep a lot, eat a lot, work out a lot, watch a lot of TV, read a lot of books, whatever we do to kind of avoid the unpleasant unknown. But I think once we're active out in the world doing something that's not just a coping behavior, we're really kind of watching and paying attention for what happens. And we're also having a lot more interactions we might have if we were just in the habit or the pattern. So I guess I'll just wrap that there, that I think this is just so relevant.
And so the question, one more quick question for people to please put your answers in the chat. Are there more coincidences during transitions, or do we only notice them more? What do you think?
Well, I want to talk.
Good.
I think both is true. But I want to go also back to why they happened during the transition more. But I was asking myself question, when are the things, and I was asking this question for last 2 years, why it is that, and when do they happen? And most of the time, the coincidences happen when you stop, when the things change, even small, and you ask, and I ask myself, what now? What do I have to do now? At that point, the coincidences are happening. So, and they happen even for the small things, not for the big things. You are forced into them because you say, well, what now? What should I do now? So you are forced into them in that sense. But I found out that even in the small coincidences, being stood up, somebody didn't come for appointment and you are there, you come there, and then you say, what do I do now? I have 2-3 hours today. And then the things happen again. So it seems even in the tiny things, and especially if you expect, it was for reason, something better is going to happen. And it does happen. So that's what I wanted to say. Just what now?
Yes, thank you for sharing, Sarko.
Sarko, I agree with that. I often feel that in moments like that, I say my timing is being adjusted. It's like, all right, something's gone on. I was a little bit out of sync, and I'm being allowed to sink into something different. So,
yeah, sink into something different. I love that. That's nicely said. So yeah, so I think a fundamental core belief of people like Bernie and Juliet and other people who've been involved with the Coincidence Project a lot. I mean, basically, the world's leading researchers in coincidences say that the fundamental belief is they're always there, and then we just notice them more, and so paying attention to them and increasing our coincidence awareness really, then when you start seeing more and more of them, and then you can start flowing with them and flowing with life so much more than controlling. So I'm going to share a couple stories. I tried to make them very quick, trying to make them key points of what happens. Okay, so here's a 1-minute story of when I lost a job. So the stock market is crashing, and we realize that our fledgling business isn't going to take off soon enough to feed our family of 4. So I wake up one day and I'm thinking, yikes, I better get a job quick. But since we had just moved to Boulder, we live in Boulder, Colorado, we didn't know many people at the time. So now I was like wondering, how am I going to get the job? I know nobody here. By coincidence, that same evening, I sit down next to another mom as we cheer for our boys who are playing soccer. She asks me, hey, who are you? What do you do? And I tell her, I'm looking for a sales management job in international tech, because that's my background. And she tells me, oh, my husband is hiring for that very position right now. 2 weeks later, I get a job. I start a job offer. I mean, it's like I was very clear of what I needed, very clear in my head, which is actually also something super, it's a key element to helping creating more coincidences or seeing them more, is being very clear, right? Here's a 30-second story of one of my clients. Was living in the Bay Area, said, I want to move to North Carolina. So this is coincidence related to moving. And she wanted to be closer to family. And she says, but I don't know how we do that, because my husband is an HVAC technician. And if my husband can't work, then I don't want to be the only person working. So she was wondering that. And she goes out for a dinner, networking dinner, sits down next to a person, asks that person, where are you from? The woman replies, I'm from North Carolina. Second question, what do you do? The woman replies, we own an HVAC business. So my client's husband found an HVAC job and they moved to North Carolina. And you know, that was, you know, also very, very clear. I want to share the story of how I found the Coincidence Project, which is about connecting the dots, okay? Because there's these seemingly one-off coincidences, and then there's like a series that kind of, there's like streams of coincidences that go back over 40 years, where you look at the dots, you connect the dots and you go, holy smokes, that's incredible. So I lost my biggest client. That was like 80% of my revenue, and which is kind of like losing your job, especially when you have kids. And I hired a coach, a psychic coach, a friend of mine who's a psychic coach. And she does numerology. And she said, she came back to me and she said, well, Katrin, you're a 33 in numerology. You need to tell your spiritual story. And because I also have a very long-term, deep spiritual practice, which has been quite amazing. Anyway, she said, you need to tell your spiritual story. You need to write it down. And so I listened to her and I was going, not really, you know, like that sounds so me. Who cares about my spiritual story? And I decided I wasn't going to do that. So then something kept bugging me. And so then I said to myself, I'm going to go on a vision quest in the desert and see what answer I come up with around that, because it's bugging me. You know, it's always a sign, right? Like when something's nagging you, like we got to pay attention. So I'm going into the desert. The way I do that is I hop on my mountain bike in Moab, Utah, and I disappear in the beautiful, beautiful red rocks there for days on end. And then I come back out. And then this time I came back out and I was going, wow, I did not have vision. I went on the vision quest, went into the desert, came out. I'm supposed to have a vision. Like, what's up with that? And so then I drove back from Moab to Boulder. It's like 6 hours on the highway. And on the trip back, I had this thought, you know what? The thing that really perplexes me, that sometimes I think I go crazy about, is that I have so many coincidences happening to me all the time, all my life. And there's these crazy stories. They're the craziest stories. They're inexplicable. I'm going to see if I can write 33 stories. Do I have 33 stories? I think I do, but I'm not sure. That seems like a lot. But that would be a way of honoring the number 33. So I arrive home, grab a stack of index cards, and I write one story per card. And I stop at 46. I'm like, yeah, I have 33 stories. So then what I do is I grab a bunch of friends online, and I mean online, I say, I'm going to sit down 33 days in a row. I'm going to write one of these stories every day, and I'm going to send it to you. And you don't have to read them, but you're my accountability buddies. So I start sitting down every day at 6 a.m. I'm at the local coffee shop writing a story. For 33 days, I press send for 33 days. And I'm telling you this story because the process of doing that is so incredibly powerful. It changed me because when you actually write down those seemingly small stories, and then you go, holy smokes, there's so much more to life than what we're aware of. And so it started changing me. Plus, I started seeing these strings, like the string over 40 years over 5 continents, okay, that led me to living in Boulder. And so anyway, so then what was interesting is that the people I sent the stories to started reading the stories. And the impact that had on them was fascinating because it tapped them into their stories. And suddenly they started sending back their stories. So they go, wow, and plus your stories are freaking crazy. You need to write a book. So I start researching. I'm going, oh, if I have to write a book, then I probably do research, what's been written about coincidences and synchronicities. Oh my gosh, so much has been written about it, endless books. But the one book that really, really stood out to me is this book. Bernie's book, Connecting with Coincidence. And then I started listening to his podcast. And I love Bernie, and I love the way he talks about this and all the research he has done for decades, okay? And he's a psychiatrist, so he's also used to people in transitions too. So then I reach out to Bernie just with an email, and I say, hello, Dr. Beitman. Thank you so much for the incredible book you've written and for the amazing podcast. You're changing my life because what I realize is I'm normal. Because I always wondered that there was something wrong with me. All these amazing like psychic abilities that did, and like precognitions, telepathy, like all these things. And I thought something was weird, and it sometimes freaked me out. And so if I realized by being involved with the Coincidence Project that first of all, I'm normal. Secondly, it's all connected. It's all connected. And then he and Juliet said, hey, we're starting this project. Do you want to be part of it? And I said, heck yeah. I want to help get this message out, this word out, this work out, and help increase coincidence awareness because, and I love that mission statement, we're illuminating the hidden currents that connect and unify us. So it's been really an interest. So anyway, there was just like a lot of dots, like looking back. So then now I'm going, if you can connect back dots looking backwards, can you connect dots or can they point forwards? And I had to, that's a common question, right? And I had to really sit with that. And here's my conclusion. It's not pointing forwards, it's pointing upwards. It's a way of elevating, of rising up. It's a way of dropping, surrendering old beliefs and tensions and kind of tuning in, opening up our heart and really listening to the heartbeat of synchronicities in our lives. So so that's one story. And I'd like to share one 3-minute story. It's only 3 minutes. May I share that story? Okay. So I lost something, like, I don't know where the screen is. Let's see. I can't see. Okay. I'm going to, oh, here I am. I can see it. Because I want to share this story. And the reason why I share it is because it has to do with how coincidences and synchronicities create so much hope and optimism. And so I'm going to share this story. Okay, and it's the death of my mom. So forgive me if I get a little emotional, but we've all lost people dear to our hearts, okay? So about a year before her death, my mom, out of the blue, announced, "A gray heron appeared," she said. "A gray heron appeared on our terrace. It looked at me, and now I know the end is near." When she said that, I was like, "Mom, that is horrible. Like, what a strange statement. Why do you even say that?" Anyway, a year later, I'm hiking in the Colorado Rockies when my brother calls from Switzerland. "Mom stopped eating. She's dying." I catch the next flight home to Switzerland. I land in time. My mom, who has been suffering from a form of dementia, recognizes me clearly, wow, and gently whispers, barely audible, "Nice that you came." She dies. We surround her, sitting in silence, trance-like. I perceive a golden, effervescent light rising from her body. Tiny bubbles of light forming into a soft, golden cloud. It felt like she wanted to hang out with us just a little longer and shower us with love and grace before merging into everything. The cloud slowly dissipates ever so gently towards the open window. In Switzerland, we have a custom that when someone is dying, you leave the window open. So this window had a light, breezy curtain. Suddenly I sense that as her cloud was dissipating, that her spirit is getting stuck in the curtains, just when, coincidence, question mark, my sister-in-law gets up and opens the curtain. She too had the very same thought, like, oh, her spirit is getting stuck in the curtain. I needed to be alone after that, and I walk along the lake. It's an exceptionally beautiful, soft, and peaceful sunset. It feels like an auspicious, sacred moment in time. I have my phone in my hand, and I want to capture that sunset. Suddenly, a swan appears. My mom always loved swans, and this very sequence of swans came through my camera. Swan approaches, bends down, bows, and then takes off. 2 weeks later, we put her ashes in the lake. And as we do so, a gray heron lands close by, silently watching us. So kind of the reason why I share that is because first of all, it's like it's all connected, and it's all connected. And when someone dies, I, from this experience, have no doubt that we're still connected. And having been involved with the Coincidence Project, where we have these monthly coincidence cafes, and each cafe has a different kind of a topic. We do more talking and interacting than now that I'm mostly talking at you. This is a speaker series. Anyway, what we've noticed over times of hearing so many people share their coincidence stories is that, especially around death, birds appear again and again and again. The great heron, oh my gosh, I have so many people who have told me that the great heron appeared when someone died that was close to them. So here's what we want you to do. When you hear of someone, when someone tells you, oh, I lost a close loved one that was close to them, you ask them these 3 questions. You ask them, did you get a sign, any kind of a sign from nature after they passed? Then you ask, what was it? And you will be surprised that more than half the time it is, or but I would say 80% of the time, it's birds. It's crazy. Cardinals, blue jays, hummingbirds, seagulls, like, wow. And then the 3rd question you ask, what meaning did you give them? What do you make of that? And it's a beautiful practice to do that. And it creates so much hope and optimism. So we would, okay, one more slide, because that's the tips, and then we can go into free-form discussion. So I'm almost done. Here's what to do, because we want you to become coincidence generators. We want you to basically increase your coincidence awareness. And so we want you to spend time in nature, open up and harmonize with the greater overall dimension. Greater overall dimension could be abbreviated as GOD. 2, pay attention, increase your coincidence awareness. The more you see them, the more they will happen. Keep a coincidence journal, just like I wrote down my stories. Start writing down yours, even if they are very small. Even if they seem like kind of unrelated, like start writing them down, okay? Tell your stories. Ask others for their stories. And I love that. As like when, I ask people at airport bars or like in coffee shops, I was like, do you have a coincidence story? And it will be so fun. Like you will see the energy shift immediately. Like people go, oh yeah, that just happened. First they look at you kind of like a deer in headlight, like kind of like, what? Nobody's ever asked me that question, but try it. When you lost someone, when someone lost a loved one, ask them those 3 questions that I just shared. 7, vision and clarity. Spend time to find clarity of what you want. Declare what you really want. Declare your vision. Feel your future state as if it's already here. And that allows the universe to just like, I don't know, show up and support you with these coincidences and synchronicities. Take a serendipity trip. And a serendipity trip is where you just go on a trip. Like, here's a small example. I was like, oh, I feel like going on a bike ride. I don't know where I'm going to go. I hop on my bike and I'll go, bike, where are we going? And let the bike decide where it wants to go. Okay. And I ended up in the comic section of the library, laughing my head off at the far side. So there's many different ways. And then meditate, and you join the Coincidence Project, the monthly Coincidence Cafes, read and contribute stories on our website, thecoincidenceproject.net. And that was indeed the last slide. So What's here now?
My wife used to, I'm not sensitive to any birds or anything like that, but we have been living for 50 years. And during these 50 years, every time that somebody died, she would say, hey, crows is flying in front of the window and is sitting on the branch. Somebody must have died. Or she would say, my aunt must have died or something. So every time we would get news after a crow came in front of the house and sat on the window or on the branch in front of the window. So I can relate to that.
Thank you.
Can I say something more? When you were talking, I also said that it seems to me that there is another thing which is very important for us to get to coincidences and get them many, and that's to trust the universe, kind of, that the things are, that this universe is going to give us sign that something is going to happen, and the universe is giving us sign. And what I call usually, oh, my friends know it, I said, whenever something happens, which is kind of strange, I said, finger of God. So they said, oh yeah, it must be finger of God, just finger of God. and so there are two things important, I think, for us. One is to trust the universe, looking for sign. And then the last one is to obey them. Not just say, oh, well, it's sign. You should follow that sign. Yes, it's just kind of, somebody passes and tells you something, think about it. Why did he say at this moment that? And take it seriously. Do it if it's something, Drive the car and there is a target and says something to you. Think what is telling you, what you should do, and so on. That's, well, I'm not saying you should do it. That's what I do, basically.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. I talked.
Yes, Sarko, thanks for sharing. I mean, it's interesting. Bernie, thanks for joining us. Dr. Bernie Mikeman is in the house. And
I got the wrong time. I didn't get the registration form, so it never got on my calendar. And I don't know what's going on, but I'm glad that I caught it. So it's good to see you, Kat, and I hope it's going well.
so, yeah, Katrin, you had your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to share a little bit of my own journey with synchronicity, which has been a fairly long one like yours. And what began becoming clear to me is that I had this urge to create a conversation, an ongoing dialogue, if you will, with this other realm that was interacting with me throughout my life. And so I now teach people how to build a conversation with the divine, or what I call the divine, and how to work with the symbols, the metaphors, the mythology that shows up during the synchronicities, and how to look them up. I would teach people just to, in the beginning when they're first learning, I'd say, well, so something very unusual happens. So you pay attention, and when you have time, just type into your search bar, what is the symbolic meaning of the gentleman before just mentioned, the crow, or the heron. The blue heron, I know, represents self-reflection, which kind of tied in with what you were speaking about earlier. And so a conversation began developing where something very unusual would happen to communicate something to me. And then I would understand what the symbol was, and then I'd have further questions about what was meant by that. Like there were several different meanings and which one was the correct meaning. And then I would get an answer sometimes 24 hours later, again in symbolic form. A synchronicity that made the prior experience crystal clear. I'll give an example. Was I was driving down the highway. I was actually in the slow lane, and it happened exactly at 12 noon. And so at 12 noon, a full-grown male, silver-haired coyote with brilliant blue eyes, just as my car came up, he put 2 paws on the highway. And I slowed way down to 5 miles an hour and just stayed fully present because I knew already that's the trickster. And so I thought, okay, there's something about tricksters. And I just kept my eyes on his, and he was looking straight at me. And that made my heart kind of pound a little because I knew it was important that he not run in front of my car. So when I slowed down, he actually walked in reverse, 2 feet off the road. As soon as I passed at this very slow 5 miles an hour, constantly with my eyes on his, he ran at a full run across 4 lanes of traffic at straight up at 12 noon behind my car. So I said to Spirit, thank you. And is there some more I need to know about this, the trickster? And so I reviewed the meanings of the coyote. And one of them is that you're being tricked, which I didn't know for sure was that the right meaning being shown to me. So 24 hours later, I kept that thought clear in my mind. Bring me clarity so I have a deeper understanding of what you're trying to share with me through this synchronicity. And I went to the bank and deposited a check, and I'm driving up the same highway, but I'm in the fast lane. And we come up to a red light, and there's one white van in front of me. And so it's a white van surrounded by black night. And the only thing really to focus on is the license plate, which said BLND, and then a space, MN. And I sat there and tears just started going down my cheeks when I realized I was being told that I was a blind man. I'd asked what kind of trickery, and Spirit was telling me it was me that was blind. They were trying to tell me about my blindness. And as I drove a little further, the understanding came to me. I was being told about my own lifelong naivete, always seeing the best in others, denying the rest, And so I thought about that, and I connected it to the coyote, and I realized I was being told that I was being tricked. So then I had to scan my life and think, who in the world is tricking me that I can't see, that I'm blind to it? And then it turned out I was shown and it was proven to me that there were 2 tricksters in my life, and both of them were on the spiritual path, and both were teachers. That was one of the biggest shocks in my life. And then later, I was even asked to help the person who founded that process, that healing process, asked me to help him remove that person because he had had so many complaints. He did not want them working for him anymore. So and then at the end of that, there was a man and a woman, both top leaders in the spiritual field, and both of them misusing power. And then it connected even deeper. About 6 months prior, I asked the divine, help me with healing the father wound and the mother wound in my life. I spent my whole life trying, help me. It was the first time I asked for help. And it was the man and the woman. The man represented my father, who was dead, and the woman represented my mother, who was dead. And it was
Wow.
all symbolic, the whole story. So I just wanted to share. And it's been a lonely journey until I met this group. And now I have a collection of books on synchronicity and I don't feel so lonely. But I spent my whole life in this conversation and trying to teach, even to today, other people how to develop a conversation with their own divinity within them through their heart.
Wonderful, Katrin. Thank you so much for sharing. And so I think we're at time.
Oh, we had scheduled to go for an hour and a half if we want to, so we could keep our conversation or discussion going for a few more minutes. We can always end a few minutes early. That's no problem. But we the Zoom had it for 90 minutes. I will say, listening to Kathrin's story, it reminds me of what John had put into the chat about following the breadcrumb trails, the connecting the dots, and that they're like little pieces of evidence in a breadcrumb trail. And I love that image, John. I think that was very savvy. And it was almost like, Katrin, in hearing your story, we were zoomed in on a moment with a coyote and the paws on the pavement, but then you zoomed back a layer and told us more about the license plate. You zoomed back a layer and it was lifelong missing things, and you zoomed back a layer and it was now actively there's something that you need to see, and back a layer, and then you found out what it was you need to see. You moved back a layer again. It's like when we're zoomed into London and then we go out to England and then we see the continent and then we see the planet. And it was your story was a little bit like zooming all the way out into the cosmos of your life, looking at the archetypal presence of man and woman, which
Exactly.
is pretty deep. I think it's worth you probably trying to write that story out in a short story format to kind of grapple with how many layers there were in there. And I wonder, I'm curious if there's anyone else on our call who's kind of resonating with a particular transition or a particular story of meaningful coincidence and synchronicity.
I'd like to comment first on Kathrin's story. It's a complicated one. There's a lot of nuance to it. And it's a beautiful story. And it's
Thank you.
very, very rich story. There's a lot to it. And I interviewed Robert Moss, who some of you may know, who's written about dreams a lot, and also some sidewalk stuff with seeing synchronicities every place you look if you want to see them. And one of the points that he made is that he tells stories very well. His thing is telling stories. And he described one, if you want to listen to the podcast, about the death head, and the dominatrix. A woman just started talking to him on the air, and while he's on the plane, he attracts stories, and he tells stories very beautifully, very clearly. And what we're doing, Juliet and Kat, and I think this is now a step up from talking with Robert Moss. We encourage people to tell stories, as you did, Katrin. But we need to practice telling them so that it's not only recording off of saying off what we remember, but we keep the audience in mind to keep them tuned in to the details that get complicated the way yours was very complicated. We could follow what you said. You know what you said. There was a lot of trickster activity going on and references to relatives of yours, but it becomes a talent that I am encouraging us all to learn how to do. Kat tells a lot of stories, and she's good at telling stories. So, Katrin, keep telling that story and seeing how it lands in other people and see what they hear. Because it's a beautiful story with multiple layers, as was Robert Moss's today. And he showed me, I don't tell stories nearly as well as he does. I can tell that part of what we're doing here, Juliet, is helping people practice telling their stories so that other people can hear what they're saying.
I can follow that. That's Thank you. I live in
You're
Seattle, and one of the meetups here is called Fresh Ground Stories. And if you ever heard the Moth broadcast on
Oh, yeah. Oh,
public
yeah.
radio, it's that idea, but it's totally out of love. There's no competition. There's no scoring. He's very supportive of people. You can rehearse with him the week before you go live at this event. And one of the things that he stresses is there's some tips you can get. And there's a book called Storyworthy, I believe the name of it is. And it really offers some suggestions from a multiple Moth winner on his approach to refining a story and crafting it. And movie making and novelists and writers and short story working, this world of storytelling has been very heavily thought about, researched, and pulled together. One of the things they suggest is, they practice whatever length you would like to tell the story in. He goes for about 7 or 8 minutes, and you end with the punchline. So you think about how do I want to finish the story, and then you more or less work backwards to understand how to set everything else up so you know where you're going to end, among other things.
That helps. That helps.
Yeah, like I just did.
Yeah, and Kat and I, in discussing the plan for this session, we're going over some of those good tips for telling a nice story, because we're all sort of learning as we go, and each time any of us have shared a story, it's one more rehearsal and how to do so with storytelling generally, and that particular story in the focus at that moment. And I think we're moving towards now developing something like a coincidence method of the good questions to ask and the ways to increase our coincidence awareness and perhaps actually increase the frequency of the number of coincidences in our life, which was that slide that Kat shared with 10 different bits of advice. But yeah, so we're coming up with a toolkit, and Bernie has written a couple page document on how to tell a good coincidence story. So I think we'll be refining all of these things with all of you in our community into future workshops, maybe a course, maybe even a pamphlet or a small book or something like that. But we're kind of starting to hone in, I feel like, as a group, a year of public seminars that we've had more than 20 of these now. And we're starting to land somewhere, I think, that with a resource that we can kind of co-develop. So file that away. I sense some of you on this call can be readers and perhaps contributors to the development of such things in the future.
Can I speak?
Yeah, sure, Marilyn.
I consider it kind of a synchronicity that I'm actually here right at this moment, and hearing this, because I have like a journal of little coincidences or synchronicities or dreams or premonitions that I've written down. And so, this I think was meant for me to hear this, so maybe I can learn how to write up those little stories. And
it's an amazing process when you do that. Oh my gosh, it really, really surprised me. It was something when you write them up, Marilyn. Keep going, keep going.
I cannot resist by when you were talking here to point to another coincidence, which when Bernie mentioned that Robert Moss. I was reading the book by Robert Moss, and he was talking about the Helen of Troy. Now, Helen of Troy is my friend, and she just wrote to me, emailed me that her husband died in Arizona. And at the same time, in Voorheesville, which is in my neighborhood, there was a reading done by a poet, what's her name, Bernadette Meyer. which is kind of beatnik New York poet, now elderly lady just like us or me. And she wrote a book, Helens of Troy, and was giving the readings. So all of these things happen like within one day or two, which was kind of amazing. So
Yeah,
I couldn't resist once that you mentioned it, that, you know, it's kind of interesting.
it's fun. I mean, part of it's fun, and some of it, as with Catherine's, there's a lot to be learned by Catherine, and for all of us, when you look in your own coincidences. For you, it's been entertaining, as Arco, it appears, and maybe there's more, but I mean, Catherine's got a pretty wound around one, and Kat's stories just go on and on. I mean, hers are more lateral. I mean, she just has so many of them, and you see patterns across them, and and Catherine's can be patterns within the one set of stories. So you can go either way. Some of you seen this form of something. I don't know what it means. It's a form that I've seen around, and you can go either way, and probably both.
May I tell one little short story?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to be able to get to. Thanks, Marilyn.
Okay, about a year ago, I was thinking about a former soulmate that had passed away, and he had visited me several times in dreams. And in one dream, he sat there with a pot, like a pot that had flowers in it. But anyway, I was thinking about him, and so I sat down and decided, well, I'm going to read back through some of the emails that I got. So I was sitting here reading emails, and there came a knock on my patio door, and it was 3 little children, neighbor children, and they brought me some sun catchers to hang on my window. And the first one they gave me was one that said love. Second one was a pot of flowers, and the third one was a butterfly. And so I know that it was a sign from this person that I had lost, that he was still here. It was pretty powerful.
What did it mean to you?
It meant that he knew I was thinking about him, and he was connecting by saying, I mean, those sun catchers were from him. The love, the pot of flowers looked exactly like the one in the dream, and the butterfly, which symbolized him being gone and changed, the spirit. So it was like, I still get choked up when I think about it.
That's why we want to hear it.
I'd like to share as well, if I may, and that's a beautiful story, Marilyn. And you said a couple of things that resonated with me, but this morning, it's no coincidence I'm here. And also this morning, I was in my final session with Katrin and Michelle in the Leaders in Transition. And I'm not at home. I'm in New York State. I'm at the home of my sister who passed away 2 years ago. I'm staying with her children so her husband can get a break. And I told the same story this morning. Yesterday was a balmy, nice day in New York, about 45 degrees. They live right on a golf course, and my sister was a phenomenal golfer. And we dedicated a bench in her honor on one of the holes, her favorite hole, the 8th hole. It was about sunset, so I decided to walk over there last night. And Katrin and Michelle talk a lot about, I mean, we talked today about birds, but also about nature and the beauty in nature and making those connections. And I sat down on her bench and I was looking as the sun was setting. I took a picture. And when I got home, there's this green light in the picture that I just can't explain. That's right below the sunset. So my takeaway for me that gives me hope and peace about that is that's my sister giving me a sign that she was there with me in that moment.
And the feeling you had with that?
Peace. And then there was a spectacular sunset. I walked home because I was getting cold, but there was a spectacular sunset that I also enjoyed. And as a result of working with Kat and Michelle, I don't think I used all my senses and it really paid as much attention to all these things around me. So I feel like I've been given a gift.
Great, great.
Yeah.
And I just posted in the chat, we have a story forum where people from anywhere in the world are welcome to share their stories. We encourage them to be a bit shorter, so maybe a piece of a longer story would be appropriate for this, or if the story is one that you can kind of pull together in maybe about 300 words, something like that. And we can pick an image, or if you have an image that is from the story or similar to the story, you can post one image with it as well. And in this way, we're starting to help catalog this growing global community of friends and experiencers of deeply meaningful coincidences. So your stories are really moving, and we'd love to see them on the story forum. And Ula, thank you for sharing your story in the chat.
I have a coincidence with that too.
With Ula's story? Oh,
yeah.
I won't read out all of Ula's story for the videos, but hopefully she'll post it on our website so that
Cool.
people that might watch the replay also have a chance to see some of the stories happening.
Yeah, I'm in a young conversation group, and this exact story from Carl Jung and his situation with a Anasan, I guess, our client, who was having scarabs appear in her dreams. And there was a knocking on the window of his office, and they go, and a scarab was trying to fly through the window, and he grabbed it and he brought it in, and they both kind of looked at it like, well, there you have it. So I don't know where the central casting is for scarabs are, but they're doing a great job.
I mean, it's been so interesting where like animals showing up around synchronicities, it's just like the scarab, of course, all the birds that we talked about, but there's also the fox or the tricksters and
the foxes and coyotes,
and owls and it's so
the butterflies and the hummingbirds both mentioned today. Those show up a lot.
The praying mantis often shows up, which surprises me. Is like,
they just seem to be really tuned in well to us, as John was saying. They're out in central casting. Hey, deploy the scarab. There's another perfect moment for the arrival of a scarab. Let's do that one again. Never gets old, guys. Let's pull it out. Because Bernie has talked about if there might be an Earth coincidence control organization, or ECHO. Is that what you call it, Bernie?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that the echo effect, Earth Coincidence Control Office, they're deploying our beautiful messengers and bearers and bridges of coincidence and meaning that are arriving. Like, what is this force that sort of bestows them, steering them in our path, like, not just breadcrumbs, but almost like flowers, people walking down an aisle with the flowers strewn about. It's like we can kind of skip from beautiful moment to beautiful moment here. And how nice it is that reality meets us halfway with this. It keeps giving us these just really meaningful series. I think the pieces around those we've lost is so poignant. And Bernie, with a colleague here in our local Charlottesville community area, Leslie Greiner, and I, mostly Bernie and Leslie, though, did a live session in October as part of our Conscious City talks. And Leslie was sharing this sequence with dimes since losing her father, that dimes will come in like the most unlikely way. They talk about pennies from heaven, but it's like these dimes, they drop into her life from everywhere. And it's just like, how could there be another dime there? I can't retell all the details, but it's like they were very unlikely ways. It's not like I went into my coin purse and there was a dime. That's where you expect it. These are things that are just so unlikely. And it's, some people that say it's only probability or random chance that dictate these things. When we would add the low probability over and over and over again for the sequences, the seriality, the sequences of coincidences, the amount of low probability cannot be comprehended how low the probability is. And we all have frequent low probability events happening. What does that say about the philosophy that it's only low probability? It just doesn't seem very viable once you start to accumulate these, even within a single life, the patterns that repeat over and over and over for us, and much less as we're sharing them as a community, and what we're seeing across all over the world, people of all ages and all backgrounds, that we're all experiencing this. It's quite beautiful.
I'd like to comment on John Scarab and how it happens. The scarab is an image. It's an idea. It's not like a bird that you can see. It's something that appears in dreams and stuff.
There is a scarab.
It's a beetle.
Or
It's a
did you
beetle.
see? Was she
It's an
seeing a real?
insect.
Was she seeing a real beetle?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Yeah, it began in her dream, and as they were talking about it, it started banging against
Knocking on the window, just like Jung's.
Just like
Yeah,
Jung.
I see Catherine's hand too. You have a scarab connection?
I just wanted to share something I saw recently that I found fascinating. It was a photograph side by side of looking at a scarab from its back, okay? And the design that's made. And then right next to it was a human brain where the skull junctures are. Exactly the same pattern, side by side. So, you know, the tapping on the window, because that woman needed to break out of an old way of thinking, right, came to my mind because that's such a famous story from Jung, you know, with his client, with the woman. And that's the first thought I had when I saw the scarab next to the junctures in the human brain, was she hadn't been in a whole brain state, but now she was.
Yeah, maybe that's an interesting.
Woke her up.
Yeah.
You know, the synchronicity woke her up to being fully present. And to me, synchronicities, I've always thought of them as the realm of eternity piercing the world of time. Where those two come together is where synchronicities occur. And that's based on some other synchronicities tied with when my fiance died, and we had an agreement to let whoever died first, let the other one know. If life, we had said, if life's like fish in a water, in a fishbowl, and the water is time, it would be so exciting if we could verify for one another, whoever dies first, that maybe there is no time, but we're still alive. And so when that occurred, I got that verification of what Chief Seattle said, which is, there is no death, there's just a change of worlds.
Wow. Yeah, interesting, food for thought. So I'm gonna have to go because I have a meeting at the bottom of the hour and I need to eat something real quick. So but thank you so much, everybody, for joining and contributing, and let's keep raising our coincidence awareness, and let's keep sharing stories and collecting other people's stories, because it creates hope and optimism.
And thank you, Katrin, for hosting our speaker series. And for those here and those on the replay later, please visit our website, thecoincidenceproject.net, N-E-T, all spelled out, thecoincidenceproject.net. And that's where our story forum is. And we are a nonprofit organization. We're based in the US, but we're operating globally. And we are doing fundraising for our nonprofit, because we keep all these events free and open to everyone. So if any of you might like to make a gift to the Coincidence Project, we have a fall fundraising campaign going on called Flourishing Through Synchronicity. And that's what we're trying to do here, help cultivate your own and each other's and the Earth's flourishing. And so there's a donate page on the website. So please visit that and consider, if you can, making a donation to help us in our operations for the coming year. And we're grateful to be with all of you. And it's just a delight to have these sessions and to meet everyone and see some of you again, and to meet some of you for the first time. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Kat.
Thank you, guys. Take good care.